Right, now we want to start getting our panels put onto our perf board. So to start off, we're going to take a look at our panels. We should have cut these legs kind of in a little angle pattern here, and I want to just lay them side by side. And I'm laying them with my negative grids up here. Not that it matters tremendously, but I guess it doesn't really matter at all. But here's what I'm kind of looking at. These resistors are going to be sitting on top of the perf board. So if I line up my resistors closely, what I just want to kind of ensure is that all of my LEDs are pretty much in line with one another. If they're not, now's the time to kind of go back and fix that if that's the case. Like if these were a little bit too high and I needed to bring them down, which you technically couldn't have had to do that if you were using that fixture that we had, but you could always just reheat and pop off the positive legs. That would fit that entire top row there, and then we could adjust them up or down. But if they look like they're relatively even with one another, and these do, then you can kind of move forward with things. So my previous video footage got dumped, and anyway, you didn't get to see me solder these in, so I'm just going to walk you through the strategy that I used for putting the 4 panels in. So I have another perf board here so that I'm just can use this to show you. Now we're going to focus on the area, this row right in here. Okay, so right below this printed area, don't solder anything into this area that has the white printing on it. We want this row right below it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is take my panels, I'm going to orient them all the same way. So these are my positive columns. I can have them all oriented this way if I want to, but that's fine. Whatever you choose to do, keep them all the same. Then as far as putting them in, what you're just going to want to do is pay attention to the holes. Actually, I'm going to change this so that my positives are all facing this way towards me. And I'm going to start with this hole right here. Now, you could start with that hole too, right where my index finger is right here. That's fine. But as far as where the other ones end up going, doesn't really matter, just so long that they're in the same row as one another. Okay? So don't focus on the number of empties between them. That doesn't really matter. What matters is that the resistors are comfortably going into the holes. And then for soldering the panels, what you'll do is you will solder one of them. One of the 2 middle ones would be best. And then just double check to make sure that it is sitting on the board, left to right, okay. And then you can put in the next panel, and then in the next panel, you'll do the same thing. You'll get it in there, but you're going to pay attention to the spacing. You're going to pay attention to the spacing this way. So what we want is we want 1, 2, 3 empty holes, and then put the panel this row right here. Okay, so if I were to have my LED panels, I would want 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go in that next one, and then you just want to get it again so that all of those LEDs are in the same hole, same row, and that they're comfortably going down in there. But now you also want to look to see if they're matching up pretty decent with the first panel. Okay, so we want to see that they're essentially level with one another, like that. Okay, we'll be able to move them this way a little bit for the time being, but that's what we're focusing on. If they're not, then what you'll do is you could just reheat the solder connection, because remember, you're only doing one for the time being, one of the 2 middle ones, and then you could heat it as you kind of move the panel to get it into alignment. If after you have it aligned how you like it, and it looks good, then you can come back and solder the remaining legs of the panels. Okay, so you'll do that one by one, just kind of putting each one in there, getting things lined up. If you need to move it one way or the other a little bit, then you can just reheat that solder. When you get it in a position, solder it up, and then when you're satisfied, you'll go on to the next panel. And then once you get all 4 panels in, you'll be able to cut the X leads off and move on to the next step. We're going to go ahead now and start getting our layers interconnected. So the negative the negatives of each of the panels on the bottom, we'll start with connecting those together. The easiest way to do it is with some solid core wire, and I have some 22 gauge solid core wire here, and I'm just going to strip out of a section of it that's a little bit longer than the width of the cube. Okay. Now if you don't have solid core wire, you could use some stranded wire, and I'll show how you can use that next, but let's start with this. So the idea is that we just use this to connect just the negative rows of each of the columns, or each of the panels, I'm sorry. So you can see how, let's see here, you can get a good shot. Here's the negative, they're running straight through there. Then on the next one over, you can see the negatives are running straight through there and straight through here, and then this is pretty easy to see, we got the negative all along here. So we want to essentially just take a wire, we're going to kind of lay it in there so that it's resting on those negatives, and then just tack onto each one of those. Okay. So we'll start with the bottom one. The outsides, those are pretty easy to get to. The inside ones, yeah, you'll figure a way to get your tip in there, but let's see, I'm going to choose to go in like this. Okay, so now I have that one leg tacked there. Now I can see the distance between these two right down here, at least at the bottom, looks pretty good. So all along the bottom, actually, the spacing looks good. So I'm going to tack the next one, the next one, the next one. And so you just got to find a way to get your iron in there. I'm finding that putting it in through there and then sneaking my solder in through here works pretty well. Okay, and all right, just make sure that it's actually solder sticking to where it needs to. That looks good. And then do the next one. And wherever you can find a way to get that iron in there is gonna be good. Just double check to make sure that you're actually getting it soldered on there. That was all right. So now all my bottom negatives are connected together. I'm going to trim that off, and I'm going to trim that side off. Okay, I can work my way up. I'm going to actually do my top ones next, because then everything will stay pretty well formed. So I do want to check and just look to make sure that these are going straight up and that the spacing is good, and pay attention to that as I'm working, and definitely before you do the top. So I'm going to seal the deal on that right like that. Okay. Close up, it kind of looks a little awkward, but if you were looking at this live with me right now, you'd see that it actually looks pretty good when you step back. So, all right, let's do that next one. Okay, now just because I wanted to show you, if you don't have that solid core wire, I'll show what we can do if we were to just use something different like the stranded wire, like from a jumper wire. Okay, the first thing that you're going to want to do is take the insulation off. So if you have the wire strippers, that's awesome, use it. Otherwise, you can cut the ends off of your jumper wire, and you might be able to just pinch and pull. Otherwise, you just squeeze gently while you pull away. And we want to just remove as much of this as we can. Usually take a little from each end. Just don't squeeze too hard. Okay, and we still got more to get rid of. Let me add some solder to this end. That'll give me something to hold on to. Tape that down real quick. Throw a little solder on here. Ooh, that's not solder, that's a wire. Okay, there we go. Okay. Alright, and then let's see, that'll give me something to hold on to it a little easier. And then go ahead and twist these wires up really good. Okay. And then finally, I'm just going to tape this one end that I soldered down and hold the wire so that it's up off the surface of my table. And I'm just going to take some solder and I'm going to tin this wire. That's what it's called, tinning. Except I am out of solder here. There we go. And so basically you just do this. You heat the wire and you melt the solder so that the solder gets absorbed into the wire. And just run it along. Alright, and that's that. So now your wire will be much stiffer, which is what we're looking for. And we can use that to then connect the layers as well. So let me do the top. Let's do the top first. So I'm just laying it on there. It's only touching the negatives. Alright, got the first one on. That's good. Check your spacing. Let's see, I'm going to get my second one. I got to push it down so it's touching the negative. Alright, and the spacing looks good on that. I'm going to tack it. Good. And continuing down the line. Touching. Let's see, let me put a little solder on the wire. And then I'll hold it down with my pencil tip. Okay. Ooh, looks like these are a little close. Yep, gonna fix that. Don't get. There, that's better. And then tack the last one. Alright, so you get the idea. What you need to do is all of the layers. So I got 2 layers left. I'm going to need to creep my iron in there and do that, but you're doing it the same way as I've just did the top and bottom. Okay, so go ahead and you're going to add one in the middle and add one there. Alright, now, one other thing too. I put these on this end and this end, so then once you lay a wire here and down there, what I would do is on this side, do the 2 middle ones with the wire on this end. So you got the wire across here, the 1 wire down here, and then you can go ahead and put a wire across here for this 3rd layer up and the wire for that one. If you want to continue watching, I'm going to go ahead and do it, but as long as you get the idea, you could probably just stop the video and go ahead and do it for yourself. I'm going to keep recording though. Take a solid core wire. Okay, and I'm doing the 3rd layer right now. So right in here, laying it on top of my negatives. And where's my solder? Alright, let's tack one end. I'm going to come across to the other side and then I'll do the 2 middle ones. All right, okay, I'm done.